Hello everyone, this is Reddit Oscar. Today I want to talk about what games I'm interested in that are coming out in 2024 or are possibly coming out in 2024. I don't vouch for the quality of these games, some of them might suck, but so far these are the ones that have caught my attention. Let's start with the DLC, the Elden Ring DLC, the Remnant 2 DLC, and the Lies of P DLC. 1 Souls DLC and 2 Souls-like DLCs. Regarding the Elden Ring expansion, my expectations for that content have become so large, so bloated, that any normal DLC simply will not do. A DLC like the kind From Software has given us before in Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 2 is just not good enough. Given how much time has passed, how long they've been working on it, and the fact that Elden Ring is their best-selling game of all time, it is not unreasonable to expect this DLC, this expansion, to be gigantic. Something similar in scale to what Monster Hunter does with its expansions. And I expect it will be priced along those lines as well. The thing about Elden Ring is that one of its biggest hooks is that there's always more. It's more and more. Every time you find a piece of the map gets bigger and you're like, wow, twice as big, 3 times as big as I thought it was going to be. You go down the Shifra Riverwell for the first time, realize that there's an entire expansive underground section, and again your mind is filled with wonder and possibilities. That's really a core loop of Elden Ring. You explore new territory, and then you start to get an idea of the limits of that territory, and then the rug is pulled out from under you, extending that feeling of wonder and possibilities as much as possible. A main element of Elden Ring is that it's big, big. And so it would be unusual for the DLC to shy away from that, especially given, again, how successful that was the first time, and the lengthy development time it's had up till now. Essentially, what I want from that DLC is more. More of everything, more and better. More bosses, better bosses, harder bosses, more weapons, more interesting weapons, more unique weapons, weapons that can serve as catalysts, more enemies, more unique environments, more and sizable areas to explore, including meaty, lengthy, well-designed legacy dungeons, and even a bunch of mini-dungeons to go along with them. I'd also like a lot of content and context to help people make sense of the existing lore. As I keep pointing out, the DLC for the Dark Souls games always reiterate the point made in the base game. It takes the themes in the base game and makes them easier to understand. A main point of these DLCs is to elucidate the base game's narrative. Especially for Dark Souls 3, in that one Hidetaka Miyazaki even said as much. Now another reason why I want this DLC out, apart from the enjoyment of the DLC, I'm sure it'll be great, I'm sure it'll be amazing, I hope to be happily surprised. But I also want it out just so they stop working on it, and we can start looking forward to their next projects. I'm very eager for news outside of just Elden Ring. Armored Core 6 proved that they are very capable at whatever they want to do. They can do whatever they want and it'll be great. So I would like Shadow of the Erdtree to come out just so it stops hanging over me, looming, and we can start getting news for whatever else they've got cooking. Now for the Lies of P DLC, I thoroughly enjoyed Lies of P when it came out. I have a review on my channel if you're interested in learning more about it. But basically I think it's the best Souls-like, and I don't think it's close. I am typically not a fan of Souls-likes, and I dislike almost all of them. But Lies of P managed to overcome that bias I have, and they did that by being the closest to From Software in terms of quality. I have in fact seen a sizable portion of Souls fans that claim to like Lies of P more. Now that is a bridge too far for me, but I understand the sentiment. Lies of P had fantastic music, an excellent atmosphere, wonderful city environments that were a pleasure to wander around in, an excellent combat system, and good bosses to test your mastery of that system. Now as for the DLC, we don't know really anything about the DLC, the only thing we've seen are these 2 images. But still, I'm looking forward to it given how much I enjoyed the base game. Now as for Remnant 2 is a 3-player co-op, third-person shooter Souls-like. It was one of the best games to come out last year, and in my opinion the best Souls-like for engaging in co-op multiplayer. And in that specific regard I would say that it's even better than the actual Souls games, including Elden Ring. I also have a review for Remnant 2, it'll be linked in the description if you want to know more about it. As for the DLC, Remnant 2 had 3 planned DLCs. The first one, The Awakened King, came out last year, and the other 2 have yet to be announced. The way that Remnant 2 works, there are 3 different worlds that you visit while trying to complete the main story. There's the forest world, the artificial alien planet, and the last one is actually two worlds that have been unceremoniously crashed together. The game is meant to be replayed multiple times, and so each world has two different scenarios, and which one you're playing through is random. The different scenarios will have different stories and different bosses associated to them, and each world will have different dungeons and side dungeons in them. What dungeons and side dungeons are in your world in any given playthrough is also randomized. What the DLCs do is introduce a third scenario to each world. In the Awakened King DLC, they added a third scenario to Loathsome. They also add a bunch of new equipment, new weapons, new loot, and new side and main dungeons to that world, to that location. The first time that you play this DLC, it introduces only the new content. So in the DLC scenario, the scenario will be new, the bosses will be new, the side dungeons and main dungeons will be new. But then after you do the DLC, everything will be integrated into the main game's formula. So from then on, Loathsome will have one of 3 possible scenarios that you can get into, instead of 2. And the side and main dungeons that came in the DLC get integrated into the Loathsome side and main dungeon pool, making it possible for you to see that content whether or not you're doing the scenario introduced in the DLC. The DLC also introduces a new main class for you to play as. So it's pretty cool. After finishing the DLC content, it fleshes out and improves the base game overall. And since there's 2 more unannounced DLCs coming, I'm assuming it's going to do the exact same thing for the 2 other worlds that you visit in the game, which for me is ample reason to come back every time a DLC drops. Now these 2 DLCs are the only ones that are confirmed, but I distinctly remember seeing in a Reddit thread one of the developers saying that more content past these 3 DLC was a very real possibility. Alright, that's enough of the DLC, let's move on to actual games that were announced, beginning with Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is the closest game to release, coming out on February 8th, 2024. It is an up to 4-player co-op, third-person horde shooter. I didn't play the first one, but from the trailers it seems to be this exaggerated Starship Troopers parody. Your home planet is called Super Earth. The trailers themselves are patriotic propaganda that frame the game's enemies as existential threats to freedom, and they use the word democracy as a synonym for explosions. There have been 2 broad enemy types that have been revealed. The first are the Terminids. They are described on the website as guided solely by an instinctive urge to reproduce, spread, and destroy democracy. The other enemy group is the Automatons, described as mindless, bloodthirsty robots coded for nothing but murder and socialist violence. Each enemy group has a variety of different units that you'll encounter on missions, with the Terminids having different types of insects, while the Automatons have different types of robots, as well as mechs, tanks, and dropships. The website boasts that there's a wide variety of overpowered weapons that you'll unlock more of as you play the game. Apart from the weapons that you're holding, there's also stratagems. These are things that you can call from orbit that you summon with short button combinations. And stratagems can vary. They can be anything from airstrikes to stronger weapons. You can also call in more supplies this way, or even use defensive stratagems like shield generators and anti-personnel mines. I'm told there was also vehicles and mechs in the first game, but so far nothing's been revealed on that front, so we don't yet know if they're going to be in the second one. I'm assuming not if they haven't shown it this close to release. Now the reason I'm interested in Helldivers is apparently I really like shooting space insects, alien insects, because I don't actually play very many horde shooters. The only ones I really have liked are Deep Rock Galactic and Earth Defense Force 5. And in both of those games, you shoot and kill giant insects. And they're not just giant insects, they are specifically alien giant insects. So I guess this is just my thing. If I see an alien insect, I have to kill it. Alright, the next game that I'm interested in after Helldivers is Unicorn Overlord. It is a tactical role-playing game published by Atlas and developed by Vanillaware. The combat is apparently inspired by the Tactics Ogre games, which is not a series I've played. According to the game's Wikipedia page, combat is split between movement of troops across large battlefields and combat when 2 units meet. All combat takes place in real time, but the player can pause to change their strategy and check on units. Combat parties are formed from multiple units with assigned character classes, with their arrangement on a grid influencing their abilities and combat efficiency. The plot has you following Prince Elaine, as he gathers an army across the continent's 5 kingdoms to reclaim his throne from the rogue General Valmor. Apparently the game is kind of open world, because during the exploration time, the player can guide a lane across the overworld, enter towns, use services, and engage in story or optional battles. And apparently you can explore freely and tackle different events in different orders. Now I'm going to be real with you. I don't see anything in these trailers that really catches my attention and makes this an interesting game for me. And since I've never played any of the Tactic Ogre games that apparently inspired the combat here, I don't really even understand what I'm looking at. The reason that I'm interested is twofold. Number one, I like tactical JRPGs. I'm a fan of Fire Emblem, or rather, I'm a fan of some Fire Emblems. And it's been a while since I've played one that I liked, so I'm hoping there's a chance that this might scratch that same itch. Now the second and most important reason is listed on their website. From the masterminds that brought you 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim and Odin Sphere, Atlas and Vanillaware present the rebirth of tactical fantasy RPG. Unicorn Overlord combines the timeless tactical RPG genre with overworld exploration and innovative battle systems for a unique epic fantasy experience in the iconic Vanillaware style. So basically, what's written in these sentences, that's the reason. It's because I like Vanillaware, I like their art style. I really enjoyed Aegis Rim and I enjoyed Odin Sphere. And both of those games were very different. I hadn't played anything like them when I played them. I'm a firm believer in that people don't know what they want, especially when it's something with which you have no experience. And so far, Vanillaware has done a good job of introducing me to games and genres that I otherwise would not have touched, and I ended up enjoying. And so my interest in this game is exclusively because of the Vanillaware brand, and because it could potentially introduce me into a genre I don't know I like yet. Alright, now let's talk about Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 is the big one. It's the announced game I'm most excited for this year. It is a single-player, narrative-driven action RPG. It releases March 22nd, and it's probably going to be the only thing I talk about or cover during that time period. So let me try and explain the Dragon's Dogma appeal. Dragon's Dogma is good because of the wide variety of enemies and the different ways that you can interact with those enemies. It's much higher than is typical for a game of its type. So let me give you some examples. First, there's the Harpies. Harpies will fly around in the air, dive at you, slash at you with their talons. They can induce sleep by singing at you, and they can coordinate that singing with other Harpies to make the sleep process go faster. They'll also attempt to simply grab your party, lift you up into the air, and if you can't get free fast enough, they'll try and drop you with fall damage. Now the way that Dragon's Dogma combat works is that you have 3 NPC pawns that journey along with you. If you're dropped by these Harpies, one of these NPC pawns can notice that and position themselves underneath the Harpy to try and grab you before you hit the ground. If they succeed, they will negate the fall damage, and you can do the same for those pawns. Because Harpies are up in the air, they can be tough to deal with for most classes, and so you can force them to the ground by setting them on fire. This burns their wings and prevents them from flying. What I find interesting is that these are a substantial number of interactions for such a basic enemy. So let's take a look at a more complicated boss monster now. The Chimera. The Chimera has 3 heads. The lion head is a physical attacker and is weak to magic attacks. The goat head is higher up on the body. It's more susceptible to physical attacks, and it'll spend its time casting magic at you. The snake can inflict you with poison, and it will prevent anyone from climbing on the Chimera, making it hard to reach the goat. The snake also has a special grab attack where it will hoist you into the air, position you over the goat, who will lick you, inflicting you with the Drenched debuff. Being drenched doubles the damage from lightning and ice-based attacks. After that, the snake will throw you on the ground. The lion has a special attack that will work on sleeping or downed targets, potentially doing it to you when you've been thrown by the snake. The goat will cast fire, lightning, frost, and slumber spells. The goat is weakest to physical attacks, but because it's so high up on the body, it's hard to get to unless the Chimera has been knocked down, or if the snake head has been severed, which allows you to climb the Chimera and get to the goat. The 3 heads can be killed individually, and killing the snake and goat heads first can make it easier to deal with the lion. But if the lion is the last head alive, it'll rampage, charging at random targets until it's sustained enough damage or it's been knocked down. The Chimera is one of the more complicated monsters, but they all have interesting interactions. The Cyclops often carries a club. You can make him drop the club by damaging his hand, by hitting him in the hand with a strong attack just as he smashes the club into the ground, by stunning him with a thunder spell, or by perfect blocking his attack. You can cling to a Cyclops leg, and this will cause it to balance on one leg. If it is then hit on that leg by an ally, it will lose its balance and fall. A Cyclops may also be wearing a helmet. You can trick him into taking it off by climbing up to his head, and he'll take it off when he's trying to grab you off of him. The cool thing about Dragon's Dogma is almost every enemy has interesting interactions like the ones I've mentioned. For example, the Griffin, if it's flying in the air, you can launch your allies onto him, and if you get all three to cling to it, then that'll be more weight than the Griffin can fly with, causing it to crash onto the ground. The other interesting thing about Dragon's Dogma is that the different vocations are very different from each other. These vocations let you interact with the enemies in very different ways, like the Strider being better at climbing on the monsters and targeting specific parts, or the Mage and Sorcerers. The magic in Dragon's Dogma is famously cool. And finally, the unique thing about Dragon's Dogma is its pawn system. The way that pawns work is that you will make your pawn, and you can customize it as freely as you customized your main character, and you even choose its vocation. Once you have your main pawn, you can get 2 more pawns, but these you must source from the Rift, which essentially means that you're going online and using other people's main pawns as your side companions. In the Rift, you can filter for whatever you want in case you're looking for specific classes, and you can even find pawns that have equipment or skills that you want them to have. It's very easy to filter for exactly the kind of pawn you're looking for. And the cool thing about pawns is that they learn. They can gain knowledge about how to effectively fight enemies. So if you have a mage pawn and it knows the elemental weaknesses of the things that you're fighting, it might use that element against them and also buff your weapons with that element. Or it might cling to a Cyclops' leg and call out to you to attack it so that it gets knocked down. They gain this knowledge through experience. And what's cool about the Rift is that a copy of your main pawn is in the Rift that other people can use. And if they use it and that pawn gains knowledge of how to fight enemies, the next time you log on, your pawn will have and use that information to its advantage. If you have somebody else's pawns and you do a quest and they hadn't done that quest before, those pawns will gain knowledge of how this quest goes. And so when they're in their world and they do the same quest, the pawns might give helpful tips or try and point them in the right direction. It's an incredibly cool system. In fact, all the systems that I've described I think are very cool, and not something anyone's ever done well before Dragon's Dogma 1. And I think one of the main reasons why people are excited for Dragon's Dogma 2 is because even Dragon's Dogma 1 didn't always use these things to full effect. People are excited because Dragon's Dogma gets another chance to get it perfect, to get it right. Dragon's Dogma 2 is in an alternate universe, and I think the reason why the developers have said that it's in an alternate universe, it's not a prequel or a sequel, is because they intend it to basically be the same game again. I see this as Dragon's Dogma but fully realized, Dragon's Dogma but actually complete. Dragon's Dogma 1, but the vision of the developers actually can be achieved at this time. And I'm extremely excited to play it. Alright, let's move on to Earth Defense Force 6. Earth Defense Force 6 is a 1 to 4 player horde shooter where you kill alien insects across a lengthy mission-based campaign. Earth Defense Force is a very interesting series. The reason that its graphics are so bad is because their main focus is on their very good gameplay and the number of enemies they need to be able to put on the screen at once. For them, graphics have always been secondary. Earth Defense Force has never been super popular in the West, but I suspect that will change eventually. This is a great game series. I think one day what happened to Monster Hunter will happen to it. Like with Monster Hunter World, eventually they'll put a big amount of effort to modernize the game and make it nicer looking, and Western players will finally realize that they've been missing out. At least I hope so. Now, EDF6 doesn't have a release date, but it does have a release season. Spring 2024. Spring ends in June, so that means at the latest it'll be June 20th when it releases. I'm really hoping it comes out later in spring, so it gives me time to fully enjoy Dragon's Dogma 2. I have a review for Earth Defense Force 5 on my channel, a very recent review, and I recommend that you go take a look at that, because Earth Defense Force 6 is a sequel and shares a continuity with Earth Defense Force 5. The games are not all connected, but 5 and 6 are. And I can't talk about Earth Defense Force 6, really, without spoiling the entire story of Earth Defense Force 5. So you should go look at that video and decide if you want to play it before I talk more about this. And just X out of the video if you don't want to hear it. Skip to the next thing. I really don't want to spoil it for people that might play. Okay? I'm about to succinctly spoil the entire story of Earth Defense Force 5. In EDF5, you're fighting off an overwhelming alien invasion. The mission campaign takes place over several years, and things go terribly for humanity. Towards the end of the game, the human population dwindles, the cities are empty, there's no reinforcements left to send anywhere. Like, it is over. It is over. You don't think there's any chance of turning this around. The aliens have 10 motherships and you haven't been able to take down any of them. And so you find another mothership, an 11th mothership, and Command decides there's something weird about this one. Maybe this one's important. And so you throw everything you have left at it. You fight past all of its defenses, you get to the mothership, the other 10 motherships are heading back to defend the 11th. And so to give you time and slow them down, what's left of the military forces every civilian that they can get their hands on, arms them, sends them out to fight. You manage to destroy the mothership, and out of it comes what appears to be the god of the aliens. You fight it, you manage to kill it, and once it dies, the invasion stops, the other motherships leave, and we apparently save the planet. Though it cost us like 90 to 95% of the population. Now, Earth Defense Force 6 happens after this. EDF6 technically has come out already in Japan, it's been out for over a year, and what I'm waiting for is just the English localization. And so the only thing I know is just a couple things I've seen in some of the trailers. So don't spoil anything for me if you happen to know what goes on in Earth Defense Force 6. But from what you can gather in the trailer, it becomes really clear that the Earth was destroyed in the war. Most of humanity was wiped out, there's almost nothing left. You're fighting in completely destroyed cities. And when the aliens left, they left behind all of their giant insects. And the humanoid aliens that they used as foot soldiers also were left behind, because they were kind of slaves that they had conquered on a different planet. So though you managed to make the aliens retreat, you didn't have the numbers to finish them off. I really like the look of the humanoid aliens here. These guys are downtrodden. They've been here for years. They were abandoned. They're dragging their weapons across the ground when they walk. And this trailer is basically the limit of what I've seen. I love Earth Defense Force 5's story, and so I'm trying to go into 6 blind. I've gone this entire time dodging spoilers, so please don't write anything in the comments if you know something about the story of 6. But check out EDF5 if you're interested. Right now, it's at full price. I recommend waiting until there's a sale. It often goes on sale. And I suspect it will go on sale as it gets closer to EDF6's release. Alright, next on August 19th is Black Myth Wukong. My interest in this game needs little explanation. It looks amazing. And by that I mean, it doesn't look real. It looks like one of those games that is a scam that looks too good to be true and that never releases. But no, it's apparently a legit game and it's coming out soon. Apart from how interesting the gameplay looks, the character designs are really some of the most interesting ones I've seen. I think that's a big part of what catches my attention here. The fact that the designs are so distinctive and they are based on Chinese mythology, which is something that I'm less familiar with than normal. Yeah, it just looks great. Alright, next I want to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, coming out February 29th. I like the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but the reason I'm interested in Rebirth isn't necessarily just because I want to play it. I think the biggest reason is because I'm curious, what the hell is Square Enix doing with this story? I want to know if they're going to change things, and to what degree, because I have talked to several different fans on this topic, and some people think that the story is generally going to be the same. Aerith is still going to die, they're not going to have her survive, and then the other fans think they've already changed too much. Some are upset that there are any changes, but many fall into the camp where they think too much has changed for it to remain the same throughout the whole experience. And that's kind of the camp that I'm in. I really want to know where they're going with this story. So much of what they've put out implies that they are intending to make genuine changes. This isn't a remake, it's a sequel or a sidequel or a reimagining, or it's a remake in the sense that the world was remade. Aerith and Sephiroth seem to have memories of the events of the original game, and Sephiroth seems to have mysterious, unknown new goals based on that knowledge. All of Avalanche has survived so far? Zack is alive somehow? Then look at the quote that Aerith says in the first look trailer.
What we've done That's set in stone. The past is forever. But the future, even if it has been written, can be changed. So focus on the future, not the past.
The future, even if it has been written, can be changed. Come on! In the first remake game, they had you fight the Whispers, which were like representations of the fan base that didn't want the game to change. And you defeat them so that you can make changes. No, I don't buy that the changes to the second game and the third game are not going to be substantial. They're going to be substantial. Something is going on here. They might have a lot of the same story beats because they're iconic, but fundamentally context is going to shift here. It's already shifted. Zack is alive. Now, I want to know what they're doing. My curiosity over what they're going to do with the story and what compelled them to go in this direction is so high that I almost don't even care about the gameplay or the rest of the game. I'm just hypnotized by the possibilities of what they're thinking. Where could they be going with this? Alright, that's the end of the list for now. I'll make another video and expand the list if new information comes out that suggests that other games that I'm interested in might come out in 2024. Until then, thank you very much for watching.